Let's go now to a former Ukrainian diplomat. Iuliia Osmolovska is in London, and she's also the executive director at the Eastern Europe Security Institute. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Now, an advisor to President Zelensky says that Russian forces are not currently trying to take over Kiev. And over the weekend, we heard from a top aide of Putin that has admitted that the Russian operation isn't going according to plan. Who's making the miscalculation here?
Well, obviously, Russians have made miscalculations already from the very first days when they dared to invade Ukraine. And we see the consequences of these severe strategic miscalculations of Russians. So they decided to switch to different tactics by threatening civilians and destroying all civilian sites instead. And even they bombed the mosque in Mariupol, which you've probably heard about, with more than 80 people hiding in the shelter, also including Turkish citizens. So they are not being selective in their tactics right now. And the main reason is to create more horror, to create more pressure on Ukrainian authorities in order to have Ukrainian side being more softer in negotiations and ready to compromise.
Speaking of those negotiations, where do you think that it's going to lead to? We're seeing almost every day now the two sides meeting in order to agree on creating humanitarian corridors, temporary ceasefires so people can leave the country. Do you think that we'll see a breakthrough of some sort to see a permanent ceasefire put in place anytime soon?
Well, judging from the developments and the previous agreements which haven't been fulfilled, especially on such a minor, if I may say so, case as humanitarian corridors, where the sides don't have political objections to each other. So they failed to reach comprehensive commitments and agreements, and the obligations are not being kept, especially from the Russian side. So therefore, I'm a bit doubtful about the actual agreements that might come up of this fourth round of negotiations, and also given that the level of the delegations, especially from the Russian side, is not those of decision makers. So we still have to wait and see what this new round will come up with. And the Ukrainian delegation mentioned that there are some signs for some drafted joint papers. So we are really very much looking forward to see what they've already agreed on. And then actually the next question will be how to secure these commitments and how to make both sides, especially Russian side, responsible to implement its commitments. This is a huge question so far.
Looking at the course of this conflict, it's been over 2 weeks now, and we're seeing wrecked infrastructure across the country. Hundreds of thousands of people have already left. They're displaced. There's an uncertain future for Ukrainians at this point. What worries you the most?
Well, we definitely understand the big complexity on different dimensions on the consequences of of Russian invasion into Ukraine. So the first and foremost priority definitely is ceasefire and withdrawal of all Russian troops from Ukraine's territory. Then we can deal with all the other consequences, like human consequences, rebuilding infrastructure and all this stuff. With regard to refugees, which very interesting observation come up, that Ukrainians are forced to leave. Actually, they are not very keen of you trace where these families are finally settling. They are settling mostly in Eastern European countries. So in the hope that they will be coming back soon to Ukraine, which is very encouraging from one sense, because the whole country, the population that had been forcibly moved from its places, are keen to get back and to get the country rebuilt, and using their all efforts to do this.
All right, Iuliia Osmolovska, thank you so much for joining us here on TRT World and sharing that insight with us.